Hello, everybody listening, and welcome back to the Bitcoin Mentor podcast. I am joined today by the lovely and very smart Claudia Sotomayor. And Claudia, thank you so much for joining us today. You're our latest mentor here on our kind of mentor meetup, as it were. I just made that up, but it seems to work.
Hi, Gary. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good morning. It may not be morning to people listening, but it's morning for us, and that's what we're going with. And before we get started, Claudia, I'm just going to read our audience your bio literally right off my screen, and we can jump into it. And I have to say, Claudia, when I first started with Bitcoin Mentor, I looked through all the bios of everybody because, of course, everybody has their bios up on the website. And I looked at yours, and I read through it. And it's only a paragraph, but immediately my first thought was, oh, damn it, I'm way over my head. It is very impressive. At least it sounds impressive to me. So I'm going to read it, and I'd love for you to talk about where you come from, your background, what got you into Bitcoin, the whole 9 yards, and we'll get to all of it. But right now, Claudia Sotomayor. Claudia has an engineering background, having worked in chip manufacturing and aerospace for the U.S. Department of Defense most of her career. Her Bitcoin journey began 5 years ago in Los Angeles. She is well-versed in all aspects of Bitcoin, from the history of money to proof of work, setting up multi-sig wallets, routing nodes, and privacy best practices. When she's not talking about sound money or freedom, she can be found practicing yoga and meditation. Claudia, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Well, thank you for that intro. The way you mentioned it, the way you say it, it's like I'm somebody important. I'm a nobody.
You wrote it. It sounds impressive to me. I mean, I guess right off the bat, what did you do for the Department of Defense?
So this is in California, and I was a civilian employee for them. And let's see, I don't want to say too much.
No, tell us everything.
I was doing missile testing for the Navy.
Of course, naturally.
Naturally, right. And specifically, I was a video engineer for them. So they have those command control centers, rooms like, Houston, we have our problems, a giant auditorium, video walls, all the different workstations. And I managed multiple of those rooms, pumping multiple video lines, live video, I mean. Okay. For the purposes of missile testing. And sometimes that included, shipping video across the country so that multiple people could participate in these tests.
Yeah. Two questions. What got you into that line of work is my first question.
So I've changed careers multiple times. If I back up, the reason I got that job is because prior to that, I was working in chip manufacturing. I was a failure analysis engineer. Basically, I figured out what was wrong with the chips, integrated circuits, and do a failure analysis why stuff didn't work. Okay. But I had a friend that worked in the Navy and said, hey, we need a video engineer. You're really good with video stuff, right? Like you love cameras. I'm like, yeah. I mean, I've had a camera hobby for many years. Had a drone. Like I just love taking videos. It's been more of an artistic passion on the side. And, but they said like they really needed a video engineer to manage this control rooms. And I said, sure, like I'll go and try it. And so I started doing that. And I liked it because it was very creative, surprisingly, even though it's a government job, coming up with very nifty solutions. And I was basically a one-person department. So I had my own budget and I had a lot of freedom to come up with whatever solutions I wanted. The lack of staff that we had, once they trusted me, they basically said, do whatever you want. And that's how I ended up there. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, sure. I just stumbled upon this job doing missile testing for the Navy. Yeah, I just walked in, unemployment office. I needed something, whatever.
Basically, yeah, I just knew somebody that worked there. And, working for the government used to be, I think, a reputable, desirable job. But nowadays it's not. So they are chronically understaffed. And these are, as an engineer, I find these are technically very challenging jobs to do. For instance, in my case, we're doing missile testing in Southern California. Most people don't know that most days there's like missiles flying over their head. Now they're not live warheads, but there's a lot of things that are happening like right in your doorstep. And in our case, we were testing in the sea range. So people are, in their boats going up and down the California coast, and they don't realize like people were testing things. Testing or training. We also did a lot of training. Multiple islands, multiple locations, all coordinating in real time. Many people involved. It wasn't just me, obviously. So the logistical grind to get everybody involved to make these events successful, that to me was a privilege to be able to witness that.
Wow. Well, now, before I get to the other question I have a new question. You said it's chronically understaffed for a government job. That blows my mind, because I used to work for the government, as you know, for about 6 years. And I feel like, the standard operating procedure in government is, why hire one person when 3 will do? So in my mind, like, there's, 18 people worth of redundancy everywhere throughout the government. I guess I'm wrong about this.
You could I could make an argument both ways. The people that we do have were not being utilized properly. So yes, there were tons of people doing absolutely nothing.
Okay.
But for instance,
that makes sense now.
Yeah. But for instance, in my case, I was in the video group.
Okay.
And it was just me. Like, I needed 2 more people to help me do that job.
Gotcha.
I was, on any particular day, I would be preparing a presentation to give it a budget meeting. Like, I'm asking for $1 million. Hey, I need this money for this project, or I'm giving a report, a design review. And in that same day, I would be running around answering calls. Like, people would call me and say, hey, I need an HDMI cable. Can you, walk half a mile? Come bring it to me. And I'm like, no, I don't have time for this. So basically doing design and maintenance, and then also operations, like day-to-day stuff, and dealing with customers. So all of that was on multiple jobs, and I was doing all of that by myself. I'm not saying that I'm like a star or anything. There were other people that are doing the exact same thing. And that's what I mean by understaffed. Like, the quality people are not, like, there's a drastic, dire need for quality people. And
Interesting.
It's just not there.
Okay. I wonder if it's a thing similar to public schools or government schools or wherever, where we spend so much more money every year, but, the test scores and the value you're getting of it doesn't really go up. And it's because there's just so many people hired in administrative positions, these redundant administrative positions. I wonder if that's the case there.
Right. Exactly. Like, there might be like tons of administrative people, right? But technical people, no. Like, I did not have the technical support I needed.
All right. That sort of makes sense. Well, the other question I wanted to ask is, I'm hearing an accent, and I'm trying to determine if that's Los Angeles or San Diego.
At this point, everywhere you live stays with you a little bit. So I've lived in many places, and that's my accent is an amalgam of all the places that I've lived.
Claudia, I'm sorry to interrupt you. This is shame on me. My sarcasm did not come through. You evidently are from the United States. Where are you from?
No, I grew up in Cuba. I was born in Havana, and I grew up there, and I came to America in high school. So the accent you hear is that I speak Spanish. Yeah.
So how did you get out of Cuba? In my mind, they're still shooting people trying to get out of Cuba. Explain this to me.
It's gotten easier, but when I left, it was very hard to leave. Yes. I left as a 14-year-old child. So my parents got me out. At that time, you had to ask for permission from the government in order to leave. And for my family, that was a multi-year process, getting that permission to be able to exit. And I'm not going to tell you the whole story, because that could be a whole podcast unto itself. But basically, my parents divorced. They married different people. They were able to exit Cuba that way. Went to Mexico, crossed the border, took a Greyhound bus, and made it to Broward. Wow. And where I had friends and family here at the time. And we got settled in Broward County. Wow. In 2004.
Wow. Now, you told me before we started that you're actually talking to us now from Miami Beach down to Miami. I'm very jealous. I'm up here in cold New Jersey, although the fall has been somewhat mild this year. And you surprised me by telling me that this is the first time you've lived in Miami. And
in Miami proper, yeah.
Yeah, as a Cuban American, I'm shocked by that. Shocked. I just assumed, it's basically Cuba in America. I just figured all Cubans live there at some point or another.
I did live in Broward, right? At high school. I did high school in Broward, which is very close, but I will, for a local, Broward and Miami are different.
Okay.
But still, I admit I did not like it here. Even Broward, I didn't like it.
Huh.
So I tried to leave as soon as I could, which I did. The same month I turned 18, I left. And I didn't come back until, 15 years later. So once I graduated high school, I went to UF in Gainesville, University of Florida. And
Sure.
that's where I went to school. And after that, I moved to California. Yeah.
Nice. All right. That's where my lady went. She went to University of Florida as well. Maybe you guys were in the same class together. I don't know.
Go Gators.
Go Gators. Yeah, sure. Yay, Tebow. That's all I know about University of Florida. Well, I love hearing this. And as you said, this could be an entire separate podcast about your journey from Cuba. And I'm genuinely interested in it. Like this, I love hearing stories like that. So if you ever want to jump on again and talk about it, I'd love to. But I guess since this is a Bitcoin podcast, we should talk about Bitcoin at some point. So, as it said in your bio, you have a pretty big history with Bitcoin. We all have our different stories of how we got into it. Can you share with us how you came to learn about Bitcoin and be passionate about it?
Well, Gary, most people, I heard about Bitcoin multiple times before I took an actual interest in it. My first reaction when I heard about Bitcoin was, I first heard about it through the Silk Road. Ross Ulbricht. Ross Ulbricht studied the same thing I studied, which is material science engineering. And he was working for a science magazine called Nature, which I read a lot when I was in school. So I felt this, I identified with him like, wow, like this is like such a smart guy, obviously. Like why is he doing the Silk Road thing and this Bitcoin thing? Why would he be collecting money through Bitcoin? But anyway, I thought the dark web, this is dangerous. No. And then I heard about it some other time. Basically, the third or the fourth time I heard about Bitcoin was at work. Somebody asked a coworker, a software engineer, hey, why are you investing your money on? And he said, I bought Bitcoin yesterday. And I'm like, what? Another one? Another engineer buying Bitcoin? Like, what is this? And my husband's brother was also really into Bitcoin and wouldn't shut up about it. And I didn't respect his opinion. I thought, like whatever. But I finally became mad enough that I said, you know what, I'm going to learn about this just so that I can argue with him why it's a multi-level marketing scheme and why this is so dumb. Let me show him how smart I am. So honestly, the impetus for learning about Bitcoin was trying to prove somebody wrong. And little did I know, I ended up convincing myself that this is like the greatest thing that's happened in human history in at least 500 years. Every time I answer one question, two more questions emerged, and the proverbial rabbit hole. Pretty soon, Bitcoin was all I could talk about. Bitcoin was all I could read about. I became one of those government employees that goes to work and doesn't do anything. I was reading about Bitcoin all day long.
So in other words, you're a government employee.
Yeah, basically. But this is what happened, Gary. I felt like I need to quit this job. This idea actually went through my head multiple times. Like, I need to quit this job. I can't read about Bitcoin. I can't learn about Bitcoin as much as I want because the job is getting in the way. There was just so much information to consume. And all the dots started connecting. My world started exploding. Eventually became untenable, and I did quit that job because like the moral hazard was too much. And yeah, it's been 3 years since I left.
Only 3 years. I don't know why I thought it was longer than that in my mind.
We're in 2024, right? Yeah, 3.5 years.
Last I checked. Yeah. I don't know. I'm an actor. I don't keep track of dates.
No, it hasn't been that long. I got started in 2019 and slowly became involved with the community, the Bitcoin community in LA. I made some really good friends. Obviously, the pandemic hit, and that allowed me to go into Bitcoin even deeper, learning about everything, right? The self-hosting, self-custody, hosting your own node. I ran a Lightning node for a while too. I bought, but I never installed. I bought one of those Blockstream satellites to like sync with the blockchain with the satellite and stuff, but I never got a chance, never got a chance to install it. Yeah, just basically became this massive hobby project, and later on started mining too. When I left the government, I moved to Wyoming, started mining Bitcoin in Wyoming.
Goodness, you've been all over.
I'm telling you, I've been everywhere. I've been everywhere at this point. Or it feels that way.
So when you left the government job, did you have anything else concrete lined up? Or you just like, I'm going to go off and just find a way to make it work?
I just left. Multiple things happened, Gary, but basically I feel like, yeah, my life imploded. I stayed at that job too long. It like robbed my soul. I've been wanting to leave for many years, but I just stuck it through. It's like, no, this is a good job. This is a good job. Meanwhile, I was like crying inside. And so what also happened was I worked with my husband, which for anybody listening, don't work with your spouse.
Terrible
idea. Terrible idea. So inevitably, what everybody had warned me about happened. Our relationship changed in a way that we could not retrieve it. And so the marriage ended. And so I left my job, my marriage, my house, my neighborhood. I left it all at the same time, and I moved to Wyoming. Wow. To be as far away from people as possible. And Bitcoin was the one thing that kept me like anchored and gave me something to do. Yeah. Before I forget, not before I forget, but in Wyoming, I got one of those, what is it called? Black boxes from Steve from Upstream Data. I got 2 of those boxes delivered.
You say this as if I know what you're talking about. Please explain what a black box from Upstream Dave is.
No, Upstream Data. Upstream Data.
Okay.
Steve Barbour, I believe. He runs that company. He's in Canada. Alberta. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. Calgary.
Maybe. Oh, Steve. Sure, of course.
Steve, yeah. He's now, to me, it's a renowned Bitcoiner. He made this black box so that people could mine at home without making so much noise. Okay. And he published the plans. I made the box myself, and I mined in Florida with a DIY box that I made with his plans. But I decided to buy his box anyway. I got it delivered in Wyoming, and I hooked it up to my house. Into the basement, and I heated up my house in Wyoming with Bitcoin miners and Steve Barbour's black box outside, and nobody in the neighborhood was none the wiser. So I'm just here to say, Steve, like you did a great job. If you want to mine Bitcoin, gotta build your one of those black boxes and heat up your house. So
you see what I mean when I say I looked at everybody's bio and I saw yours and I realized I'm way over my head. So I'm very impressed. To anybody listening, we really would love for you to come by Bitcoin Mentor. We have a lot of great people here who can really help you out. If you are a newbie and you're just looking to get your Bitcoin off of an exchange or use an exchange onto a hot wallet, cold wallet, I'm more than happy to help you out. If you're looking to do something like mining far away with some sort of black box and heat up your home, don't just skip right by me. Go straight to Claudia because she's the person to talk to. Very impressed.
I mean, Gary, it's all about having fun. Like to me, I was just having the time of my life. It was so fun, so interesting. The smartest, most dedicated people I know are obsessed with Bitcoin. This is part of the reason why I think this is such a powerful idea, is that there are so many great minds absolutely devoted to this thing. It's not about the money at all. It is about the money, but it is about the money to me from an energetic standpoint, in the sense that this is how you can change people's lives for the better. Not like, oh, here's $10. No, it's drastically change how we interact with one another. Gary, it's an amazing time to be alive.
I agree with you. I fully agree. Yeah, it's amazing. We're on the cusp of something great, I think. And when you said earlier that this could be the greatest invention in 500 years, I mean, in theory, I think it could go down as maybe one of the 5 greatest human inventions of all time.
Right.
You know,
right. I don't want to be super hyperbolic. I mean, I'm already Cuban. I tend to exaggerate a lot. But I want to say like easy 500 years since the printing press.
Yes, and I agree with you. I don't like to be hyperbolic either, which is why usually when people talk about how high the price is going to go, I'm sort of the wet blanket in the room. I'm like, pump your brakes. I don't know if it's going that
Right.
high, that far just yet.
Right.
And I could be wrong, but in the grand scheme of human history, the idea of having a technology where we can actually, as Michael Saylor talks about, move our wealth across both space and, most importantly, time. I mean, before then, there would always be wealth loss and high wealth risk in anything that you did, that you'd be able to move it across time for future generations. And with this technology, that risk is large. I don't want to say gone, but largely decreased. Everything you can build using this, where you can plan for such a low time preference into the future, it's miraculous. So, like you said, number go up, everybody makes more money. That's great. I'm a capitalist. I have no problem with making money.
If that gets more people involved, that gets more people interested, yes,
sure.
Please come.
Exactly.
Please come.
Yeah.
But just know that that's not the only thing. There's more here for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, okay. And I usually ask people, like, what got you into Bitcoin? Was it a technology thing? What is a philosophical thing? Was it just number go up? And it seems to be both a technological and a philosophical thing for you, if I'm not mistaken.
So I remember reading the Bitcoin paper, Gary, and thinking, okay, so what? Mm-hmm. Like I understood it from a technical point. Okay, I get it. Like the network, this and that. But why is this important? Why are people so excited about this? It took me a while for those dots to click, like the economic aspect of it. The Bitcoin for me, eventually I realized ended up being a very spiritual journey because it allows you to zoom out and see. For me, this is what it did. I zoomed out and I was able to see myself as one domino in a long string of dominoes. Thinking, for instance, like the line, like the generational line, the family that I come from and who's going to come after me. And why is everybody in my family, for, 3-4 people back, we're always working. Everybody's working for the house that they live in, like to get a house. And like my grandparents got a house, my parents got a house, but I'm also like in the same, basically reinventing the wheel. Like we're not actually progressing. We're always like in the same problem. And basically what my parents worked for, or my grandparents worked for, was not passed down to their children. So like I didn't inherit anything from my parents outside of a really good education and tons of love. But I'm like, why? Like my neighborhood, everybody I know are extremely hardworking people. And you see decade after decade, like they're in the same place. And I'm probably jumping topics here, but to me, everything is related. Growing up in Cuba, the dollar was illegal. People went to jail for having dollars in their pocket.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Like I don't remember it because I was a baby, but when the Soviet Union collapsed, the Cuban currency just went into like free fall. And the exchange rate got into the 200s and the 300s per dollar. So basically your entire monthly salary was $1 or $2. I mean, crazy. Honestly, not very. It's the same story. It's the same story as like Argentina and all these places. It's the same story. But I was a kid when I lived through this. And the problem got so bad that people naturally were trying to transact in dollars because the local currency, like you couldn't do anything with it. It was all over the place. And so to clamp that down, to manipulate control, they made the dollar illegal, right? So you could get arrested for having dollars in your pocket. Today, you will, if anybody goes to Cuba and anybody's familiar with the situation there, you'll know that you cannot do anything in Cuba with dollars. Like even the government is selling stuff in dollars. So eventually,
you can't do anything without dollars, is what you're saying.
Without yes. dollars, sorry. Okay. With the regular currency, like nobody wants it. It's basically completely collapsed. It's only there like in name only. So long story short, what I'm trying to say is like this idea that the hardest currency always wins. I lived through that. The hardest currency in Cuba at the time was dollars, and the dollar won. Like a long time ago, it won. The politics don't matter. What matter are the people, and the people made their choice because naturally we'll gravitate towards the hardest currency. And so that lack of sound money has made my family unable to actually pass down wealth. And they're doing the same thing to us here in America, now at an accelerated pace. And so once I made that connection, then I understood the value of Bitcoin. Like, wow, like this is actually a tool for freedom. And before Bitcoin, I'll admit something here to you. Maybe like this is gonna put me on some blacklist. Before Bitcoin, I would constantly dream up of doing the same thing that like Fidel Castro did or that Jose Marti did. Jose Marti was a Cuban guy that lived in America for many years. Anyway, he helped Cuba get rid of colonial Spanish rule. I thought, man, I'm just gonna like save up all my money, buy a bunch of guns, go to Cuba, take over, and like form a new government. Okay, this is what I spend all my time. Like I was actually writing up like government plans. So what kind of talent I'm gonna tap into for like minister of this, minister of that.
Wow.
And then I learned about
impressed,
Bitcoin.
By the way. You're not on my blacklist at all. I'm very impressed, but continue.
But then I learned about Bitcoin. I'm like, actually, there's no need to fire bullets here at all. All we have to do is this is actually even harder than firing bullets. Firing bullets is easy. But to bring education to a place like Cuba and anywhere in the world, right? Like that grassroots movement from the ground up, educate people as to this is why you're being controlled. It's not blue or red. It's the money. It's what's in your pocket.
Yeah.
Giving people the freedom, not giving people the freedom, like the tools of freedom, then everything else will fall into place. But yeah, without Bitcoin education, the schemes and the control will continue. But after I learned about Bitcoin, I thought actually my time is better served teaching people about Bitcoin than it is trying to like plan government overthrow in a country that I haven't lived in 20 years.
Do you still have family there?
I have some cousins, and some uncles.
Okay.
Yeah, but most of my family lives here now. Yeah. When I say here, I mean in Miami.
Are you able to communicate with your family in Cuba?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's WhatsApp and Signal. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, education. Education is the only way. It's a long way, but it's the worthwhile way.
When you were a kid in Cuba, what kind of line of work did you imagine getting into?
Maybe this sounds arrogant, but I always knew I was going to be an engineer. I was good at math, and I hated everything else. And my dad was an engineer. My mom is a pharmacist. So pharmacist, engineer, I became a chemical engineer in material science. So I'm an amalgam of my environment.
That's great. Yeah. When you go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say is maybe not now, but growing up, everybody I knew was either, not everybody, but in my family, my neighborhood, most people were either engineers or doctors. Those were the only worthwhile professions.
No baseball players?
No. I mean, kids play baseball in the street, but I didn't know any baseball players. And of the kids that I went to school with, both boys and girls, everybody became an engineer. So I became what was expected of me. Yeah. I don't know that choice.
I've read stories about, Cuban doctors, highly educated people who end up making more money driving a taxi cab in Cuba.
Oh my God. I mean, anywhere, like go on the street, put your hand out, just like in New York, get on a taxi. Chances are the driver is a neurosurgeon, a nuclear physicist. I mean, like all kinds of, I'm telling you, it's the director, I forget his name, but the director of the Havana Aquarium for the longest time was a nuclear physicist and who studied and graduated in the Soviet Union, but there were no nuclear power plants in Cuba. So now he was running an aquarium. And that's a pretty good job, I guess, compared to, not pretty good, but I mean, he's not driving a taxi. and yeah, I mean, taxi drivers make more money than directors of anything. So
and I think, based on the selection of people likely listening to our Bitcoin podcast, it's probably going to be more so, libertarian ANCAP type. So not necessarily. Can you explain to our listeners why it is that a doctor in Cuba would decide that he would be better off, or she'd be better off, driving a cab than working as a doctor?
So what you need to understand is that Cuba is a giant casino, and the casino owners are the Castro family, and everybody that is inside Cuba is a player in the casino. And as you know, the casino always wins. So everybody that is in Cuba, tourists or national alike, has to use the casino chips. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the government determines how much to pay a doctor. That's a state salary. And the salary for a doctor, I forget what it is. When I was growing up, it was capped $25 for everybody. Now it's probably like 50, 60, something like that.
Rolling in it now.
Okay. Yeah, rolling it now. A taxi driver, on the other hand, collects fares from the people that he services, right? The people that get on the taxi.
Mm-hmm.
Where do the people on the taxi get the money? Some of them get the money from their state job. Some of them get their money from their relative in Miami who sends them money. So the taxi driver has that connection with outside money that a doctor does not. That's why people that in Cuba that work in tourism, or people that offer services to people that have family abroad, they are the ones with money. And so that's usually people in tourism, people, taxi service, restaurants. Those people make more money than actual industry.
So people that drive cabs, they are not paid by the government, correct? That is a private enterprise.
No. Right, correct.
And yet the government has decided that they want, the national healthcare system where the government pays the doctors, and that way everybody can get healthcare. But of course, the irony is, by them paying with state money and deciding what the price is for each doctor, the doctors don't have the incentive to keep practicing medicine.
Right. So there's multiple things at play here, multiple dynamics, and all of them lead to no healthcare or very bad healthcare, and the what is it called? The malinvestment of human capital. Because for a country like Cuba to spend so many years training these doctors to then only have them drive a taxi, this is a huge loss. There's thousands of people this way. And that is the ones that are still in the country, right? There's all the others that have left, people like my family. So, but they choose to do this because they're addicted to power. Like I'm all these different reasons, whatever. But I lost my train of thought, honestly.
No,
but
it's okay. I get it.
They can do this because they control the money. Cuban money is not. The Cuban peso is not exchangeable. It's not a floating currency, technically. It's not exchangeable abroad. It's a piece of paper. And inside the country, the government sets the exchange rate with the dollar.
It's a casino chip, like you said.
Yeah, right. So, I think for the longest time, the government set it at 25-1. Maybe it's different now, but roughly around there, 25 Cuban pesos to $1. But on the street, it's like closer to 300 to 1.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. So,
And if you don't know the answer, that's fine. But is Bitcoin making any inroads in Cuba these days?
There is some inroads, but I would say it's so small. I tried to teach Bitcoin to my family, people that were more technically savvy, cousins that are engineers, and they were very hesitant, very skeptical, they value hard cash. Cuba's a cash economy. So physical dollars trump anything. And the thing is, for instance, Cuba hasn't had power. The whole island hasn't had power for like 2 weeks. So this is a challenge. Okay. You having money on your phone, the chances are like my phone could die. Somebody can steal my phone. The electricity is so unreliable. that physical cash for that reason wins. And I understand. So the situation in Cuba, like the basic infrastructure fundamentals need to improve before a conversation about Bitcoin can have more fertile ground to grow on. Because right now it's like talking to honestly, like it's like trying to tell people in the Amazon jungle, like a uncontacted tribe, hey, here, use Bitcoin. They're like, no, we're on barter over here. Like, it's like that.
It's not so much a political resistance as it is just the lack of power, the lack of electricity.
Yes. Yeah. Like the people have been reduced to such like animal subsistence levels that talking about Bitcoin is like just way above. Like
it's interesting because we do hear of, many countries, where the inflation rate is just insane, even compared to our inflation rate. And you would think they'd all be flocking to Bitcoin, but many of them are flocking instead to Tether, US dollars, tokenized. And I guess that's because the dollar, as much as we poo-poo it here at home and we laugh at the government money printer and the Federal Reserve, it's still valued compared to those other currencies around the world. So people will go to that before they go to Bitcoin in a lot of places, it seems.
Yeah, reputation. In a lot of places, Cuba included. I'm not an expert on Cuba, by the way. I don't want to present myself that way.
No, you are from Cuba, therefore you're an expert on Cuba.
But in a lot of places, yes, like America is seen as this impeccable, pristine, perfect country, and the dollar is its emissary. So dollars are clean, dollars are good, and they have been good. So it's that mentally, like you don't question it. You've been striving for dollars your whole life. Now you're not thinking, wait, like hold on, like I mean, people don't even know who prints dollars, right? Like in their mind, this is money, and you don't question that. Yeah,
I can understand that psychologically. Wow. All right. Well, baby steps. It's baby going around.
We're baby steps, one at a time. What I've decided on a personal level, I've decided, you know what? Like I have more chances of convincing my Cuban friends in Florida, and slowly that can act as seeds that eventually make it more to Cuba. But in Cuba itself, it's hard.
You said you'd like to try to convince your Cuban friends in Florida. This is something that I've tried to step back from, because of course, the passion of the newly converted, we all want to convince everybody else. This is the greatest thing. You should be in on it. Yeah. When you talk about convincing people, can you tell me some things you might say or do to try to convince them?
Okay. That's the incorrect term. Convincing. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything at this point. It's just sort of like, hey, maybe you want to learn about this before the current system collapses. Don't wait, right? Don't wait for your house to burn to then get fire insurance. So kind of that's how I present it, like figure out what's going on, pay attention.
That makes sense.
So as most newbies, when you first learn about Bitcoin, once the gravity of the situation and the solution weigh down upon you, then you realize, oh my God, I have to tell everybody. It's like you found God and you want to tell everyone.
Sure.
So then obviously the bear market comes, and then all your family and friends at the Christmas party. This happened to me last New Year's Eve. My cousin stuff, everybody's like, so what's going on with Bitcoin? What happened? And I'm like, what do you mean what happened? Bitcoin's doing the same thing it's always done.
Yeah.
Nothing's happened. And they're like, oh, I lost some of this money. So they start complaining and blaming me. And I'm like, hey, I told you you have to wait. Like, let it do its thing. Like, Bitcoin is the money. Don't let other people confuse you.
Yeah.
Right. Again, it's that belief, that conditioning that the dollars is money, that they think because the exchange price of Bitcoin changes, like, oh, somehow it's now less valuable because now you can get it for 20 bucks instead of whatever. So it's the unlearning. To get Bitcoin, you have to unlearn things. And so how do I get it across to my family? How I've tried to get it across. I use the examples from Fidel Castro and what has happened in Cuba. Because to a lot of Cubans, what's happening in America right now, it feels deja vu. It's sort of like, we've been here before. This feels like 1959 all over again. So that deja vu moment, and that's how I tell people, hey, if you Cuban, you imagine you were in Cuba in 1959, knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently, right? If you were in Cuba in 59, would you stay? Would you leave? Would you sell your stuff? What would you do? And so that's how I frame it with regards to Bitcoin.
It makes sense. And, as we say, you buy Bitcoin at the price you deserve. So all you can do is try to put it out there and answer folks' questions if they're interested in asking and be available to them. But they're going to have to come to it on their own.
But Gary, I don't know how your experience has been, but my experience is the hardest thing is not to demonstrate that Bitcoin is valuable. What has been more difficult for me is separating Bitcoin versus the shitcoins. Because once like somebody gets Bitcoin, they're like, oh, what else is there?
Yeah.
And that has been the pain point. The strongest pain point for me is helping them navigate that, hey, it's not the same. Don't get fooled.
How do you explain the differences to them?
Well, it depends on the audience. So I try to tailor the message depending on who I'm talking with. But basically, hey, there's only one sun. There's not two suns. So there's only one truth. You can't reinvent the wheel. You can't invent fire again. Along those lines.
Okay.
Digital you can only invent digital scarcity once. There's no digital scarcity second time. Yeah.
Do you ever talk about like the decentralized nature of it and there's no central choke point, or is that just getting too technical and people kind of tune you out?
So yeah, exactly. People tune out. Like I start, I could mention, for instance, hey, all of these tokens, there's a representative. Some of them, like they hold 70% of the tokens in existence. Those market caps are not real. Just because, they're trading at a particular price. They have all these other tokens that they're holding. This is not the actual market cap of this thing. And the fact that it can be manipulated by humans. If it can be manipulated by humans, it's no different than what we have today. So for us to change to something else, it needs to be at least 10 times better to overcome that resistance of the inertia and the reputation, right?
Yeah.
The history. So Bitcoin is the only thing that can do that. Yeah, man, the shit coins. God. Yeah, but
it's okay.
I mean, I was a shitcoiner once too, and that's what I try to remember.
I feel like many of us have dabbled at one point or another.
It takes some time. The thing is, like, the idea of Bitcoin is so exciting that it spills over. It spills over, and you think like, how else can this be used? Sure. When you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Right?
Of course.
So it's
and I get it from the mindset of just any rational person. You think, oh, okay, there's such a huge market for this. I missed out on it. Let me find the next big thing. And they go, I totally get that mentality, except like you said, there's the fundamental difference between Bitcoin and everything else.
Right. Now, I have friends that were working at the Pentagon, and they're like, oh, I'm advising the Pentagon on blockchain. And I'm like, what is there to advise? It's a data sheet. It's an Excel sheet. Like, what are you teaching them over there? and he's like, oh, crypto's the new thing. And I'm like, it's not crypto, it's just Bitcoin, dude. Like, they're wasting their money. The Pentagon's like one more. I mean, they just failed their most recent audit.
Yeah, I saw. What do you expect?
This is exactly why. This is exactly why they're paying advisors to advise them on crypto.
Yeah, and they're paying like $5,000 for a hammer. I mean, that's what government does. Well,
Yeah.
I do have a couple final questions because we are getting, well, it's around 45 minutes in. I'm going to try to keep it under an hour if we can. And I know you
Yeah.
have places to be, but
I mean,
what,
anybody listening, thank you for staying this long.
yes, definitely. Thank you. Um, a couple things, you mentioned in your bio how you do yoga and meditation. Now, that automatically sets you apart from pretty much every single other Bitcoiner I know, because for some reason, every single Bitcoiner is into martial arts, often jujitsu. Are you the exception? Are you into that at all?
I'm not into martial arts, but I do know Bitcoiners that are into yoga as well.
Oh, okay.
Uh, uh, I mean, there's phases, right? We all have that phase where you check the price every 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You consuming all the news, that's the initial phase.
Don't mind me. I'm still listening. I'm just checking the price. Keep talking.
Okay. Then you reach the point where you don't care about the price. You don't want to know even. Because it affects you emotionally. Because eventually you realize the price is the least interesting thing. Like you don't even want to know. And for me, yoga helps me breathe. Like I've learned how to breathe. We all know we think how to breathe because we've been breathing as long as we've been alive. But technically,
I mean, Claudia, I'm doing it right now. I don't like to brag.
Right. Like we have all this experience breathing. So I learned how to breathe better to have different outcomes or different results depending on how I want to feel. Basically control your breathing. Because at the end, that's the only thing you can actually control. Everything else is like not up to you. So, and through these volatile times, through these times of extreme uncertainty, yoga has helped me cope. And I found it like a good balance to Bitcoin yoga. Yeah. So
that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I think there's a lot to that. I'm an actor, and a lot of acting is just, it's breathing, being aware of your breath, being alive in your own body. So I'm with you. I get it.
Right. So you get exactly. First of all, we're all actors. We're always acting.
Yeah,
we have some persona that we have on.
Sure.
You're just doing it more skillfully than most people. You, Gary, I mean. And
what I'm here for, breathing. Praise. Thank you. Keep it coming.
Everything, this is what I learned, actually. Everything that I want to do, this is not necessarily related to Bitcoin, but Bitcoin allowed me to reach this point, which is learning that everything that you do it better if you're relaxed. Like whether you're shooting, you're acting, you're running, you're in a stressful situation, whatever it is, if you're relaxed, you can perform better.
Yeah.
And the only way to relax is to control your breathing. Yeah. So in these times when the price is like all over the place, banning this, legalizing that, all these different things happening, people have like, you get super anxious, Bitcoiners, not Bitcoiners, whatever. Breathing helps you like get through.
That's great.
And hope that the future is going to be better.
I think it will. I hope. Yeah, who knows? I can't predict it, but I think we're in a good place.
Well, I will. The last thing I want to admit is, if it wasn't for Bitcoin, Gary, it would be hard to stay hopeful. That things can get better. Ted Kaczynski. I see Ted Kaczynski and Satoshi Nakamoto. Yeah, did I say it? Sorry, I said it wrong.
It's okay. Either way.
Kaczynski.
He's dead. He doesn't care.
Right. The Unabomber. Yes. Ted and Satoshi Nakamoto are two sides of the same coin to me. Okay? Except Ted chose to see it as the battle is lost. The glass is half full. The glass is half empty. I mean,
I knew where you were going.
And so that pessimistic view, like the onslaught of technology, like we don't stand a chance. And Satoshi chose to see it the different way. The glass is half full. And actually technology is a tool for freedom. And yes, we can fight. We're not hopeless. We're not helpless. We have agency in our destiny. And here's this tool. Go ahead and use it. So lots of people out there are on the TED camp, even though they don't know who TED is or what TED did or what he stood for. But I'm firmly on the Satoshi camp, which is I choose to believe that the future will be better and Bitcoin will help us get there. Bitcoin is not the solution, but Bitcoin is the tool that will help us fight to get to where we want to be.
I think that's wonderful. I had a couple other questions, but they pale in comparison to how you just finished this up. So I'm not even going to bother. I think that's a great place to leave it. For folks at the FBI, again, Claudia talked about overthrowing governments and Ted Kaczynski. So do with that whatever you will. Claudia, you're wonderful, and I think it's safe to say I speak for everybody at Bitcoin Mentor. We are very, very lucky to have you as part of the team, and anybody who wants to check out Bitcoin Mentor would be very, very fortunate to work with Claudia. She's wonderful. She could help you out, I'd imagine, anything. And, it's a pleasure to finally chat. We've never actually sat down to chat before. So this is great.
I missed you. I missed you in Nashville. I was serving coffee for 3 days straight. They overworked me to death there.
That's great.
Mike, if you're listening, I'd love the opportunity to work with you. But yeah, I didn't have a chance to meet with you and the other Bitcoin mentors that were there. But
Will you be in Vegas in 2025?
If I get to serve coffee again, yes.
That's it. Only if you get to serve coffee.
No. I mean, I would like to go. It's just I've been to Vegas so much, man. Like
I know.
Vegas is not my dive. I'm more of a beach person now.
I'm 100% with you. I've been there a few times, and within a day, it's boring. I'm not a gambler. I'd much rather just be at the beach.
I'm not a gambler, and Vegas is one of those places like you've done it once, you've done it a million times already.
Which I'm going to say, just a quick note. It's funny. So many people think of Bitcoin as gambling, and I view it as the anti-gambling. I'm not a gambler. You're not a gambler. We view this as a long-term savings, not a place to go to the casino and try your luck. But it's just a whole different mentality. Yeah.
If you're trading, it's gambling. If you're just buying and holding, it's not gambling.
Yeah.
It's halal. So
I'm sure your boyfriend would approve of that description.
He's not a Bitcoiner, but I'm working on it.
Well, good. I hope you get him there. Well, can you tell everybody where they can find you on social media?
Well, you can find me mainly through the Bitcoin Mentor website, bitcoinmentor.io. And I'm also I'm not on Twitter since Elon took over. I'm not on Twitter anymore. Not that I have anything against him, but the website doesn't work for me and I'm tired of struggling. But I'm on Instagram at RealClaudia9.
Real Claudia 09?
No, just the number 9.
Just number 9. Real Claudia 9.
And then 9. Telegram's the same handle, Real Claudia 9.
Are you on Nostr at all?
And I'm on Nostr, but it's been a while, honestly.
I know nobody uses
I'm
Nostr.
on the actually what I'm using more is that Bitcoin Pill app. So I met a bunch of Bitcoiners through the Bitcoin Pill app.
Oh, the Orange Pill app?
Yeah, the Orange Pill. Sorry,
yeah,
Orange Pill app.
I have that.
Yeah, so that's how I met a bunch of Bitcoiners. I'm sorry, I just opened it up.
It's okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Claudia, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for taking the time. I'm sure you have a lot of stuff you need to get to today. So I appreciate your time.
Gary, you were great. Thank you for listening to my diatribe.
No, it's been wonderful.
I appreciate you. You're great. And
I look forward to meeting in person someday.
It's going to happen. Come to Miami or in Vegas.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah. All right.
Take care.
Bye.